Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and in front of me I've got a variety of different things. This right here is just a bunch of shredded paper bag, and I was going to use that as the accompanying bedding to go with this yummy feeding of pumpkin. I've even got my crushed eggshell grit on standby. The systems that we're feeding, I believe we already saw them a moment ago in the backdrop, are my yellow buckets, and it's only been 10 days since we last fed these little guys. They received something similar to what they're getting today. They got pumpkin, but they also got green beans and coffee last time. This time it's just pumpkin. And I got a feeling the pumpkin's bringing with it a good bit of moisture, and that's the reason I wanted to go with dry bedding today. I usually use like a prepared bedding. It's up in that little container on the shelf with the green lid. And that stuff's got cardboard in it. It's got some moisture, some leaves. Today we're just going to go with this dry shredded paper to accompany the feeding, and that'll be it. So let's slip on a glove and get these little guys fed. These African night crawlers, they like their carbon, so giving them plenty of bedding is usually a good idea. Well, any worm bin, it's usually a good idea to be pretty generous with the bedding. Seems like our feeding zone indicator, which we don't really actually use very much in the buckets, is in good shape. And let me just peek. Yeah, I just took a peek over in bucket number 2. Same story with the feeding zone indicator over there too. I guess it's kind of obvious when you're in a bucket where you're feeding, you pretty much drop the stuff down in the middle. And that's the stem of something, just the way it's showing fibers over here. Over here, I don't know exactly what it is. I think we, even last time, had like a little head scratching. Maybe those are green beans? Some of the green beans we gave them last time, maybe? I don't know. Green beans and pumpkins after 10 days. We're definitely seeing leftovers of some sort of vegetable matter here, but they're all totally stripped out and hollow, just outer skin fibers holding out. Perhaps a little bit tougher and taking a little bit longer to eat. I'm not sure what that was. Just the way it breaks, though, it makes me wonder if perhaps it's corn cob, or maybe it was the stem of a pumpkin. Eventually those things will break down to the point where they're very easy to just crumble too. Yeah, today I think we are going to focus a little bit on moisture. I've even thought about maybe coming back in with no plastic coverings and allowing the air in, or the moisture out is really more what we're trying to achieve here. If we're going to try to deal with the moisture and perhaps allow the system to kick off a little bit of it through evaporation. That was the impression I got last time as far as the moisture content. I went down deep, I pulled out a sample of material. It seemed a little bit muddy. I can't remember which system it was, but I would have to assume that they're quite similar to one another. I'm not getting that same sort of sense of overly muddy. Maybe it was in bucket number 2 where we got that sense of perhaps it being overly damp. In here, I would not say that that's the case. But I think we're just going to strive for consistency since we had such a long period of inconsistency. Because over in bucket number 2, we did this set it and forget it test for something like 7 weeks, and during that time nothing was applied over into bucket number 2, while bucket number 1 over here just received everyday, not every day, but routine maintenance in terms of getting checked in on and fed every so often. Yeah, the 10 days interval between check-ins this go around is a little bit less than last time. Last time we came in after a 12-day pause in between feedings. I wonder if it's because I'm not taking any breaks. Almost filming every day. Maybe I'm running low on systems. I need more systems. Maybe. I don't know. It's kind of an unusual, very deep pit that we've dug today. I don't think we've been successful in getting it so deep yet. The outer walls would always sort of collapse on us, but maybe it is very damp, and maybe it will do it some good to get some dry paper. And I thought that instead of the dry paper going in as just a big mound, I thought that perhaps we could even layer in some damp materials and combine them a little bit so that there's a little of this, a little of that, allowing for perhaps a little bit more worm traffic. And perhaps the dry will sop up a little bit of what seems to be an ample amount of moisture. Perhaps not too much, but I wouldn't mind seeing it a little bit drier. But I'm still sensing that, I'm just trying to get a sense of what I'd want to do. Let's see, is it even split? Let's get this back to this collection so we can put that one into bucket number 2. I think that's a fair split now. Let's also sprinkle in a little bit of my pulverized eggshell as grit with this feeding, and that's all they're getting. Nothing too fancy. But let's continue in with a few more applications of bedding over here. You saw that recess when we first arrived. They had definitely cavitated the space where the feeding was last time applied. I don't think I saw any of the bedding that we used last time. Last time we used soiled napkins and paper towels to actually bundle the food, so it's no surprise that the bedding that they got last time, being in direct contact with their feeding, must have just sort of gone along for the ride and been consumed. Here and there I definitely saw bits of vegetable matter appearing to me like possible leftovers of the previous feeding or some other bygone feeding. But I don't get that sense here that we're overly dry. We're actively, putting in, overly damp. We're actively putting in drier materials to aid in the absorption of the moisture. Gosh, I just keep misspeaking. But I think you get the idea. We're just going to stick with what we had before. We did contemplate maybe switching coverings to allow for a little bit more breathability, but I think we're going to be A-okay. Just the way we are as far as top coverings are concerned for now. Here again, we're going to hang on to this feeding zone indicator. And here I see a little bit more dryness, perhaps a little bit more airflow around the bubble wrap. Sometimes it seems like the bubble wrap allows for a little bit more airflow. Other times it seems like it's doing a really good job keeping the moisture in and down. So I'm wondering what we're going to sense as we get in here as far as moisture is concerned. Perhaps I was seeing something 10 days ago which has since changed on its own. I came at this with the assumption that that last feeding of juicy vegetables might bring with it a good bit of excess moisture. But perhaps we already did a pretty good job as far as counteracting any excess moisture brought by the foods by making sure we have ample bedding too. It just did seem to me like we might have been a little skimpy on the bedding last time. I believe what we're seeing here is some skin of pumpkin, because they'll usually eat the juicy, meaty part of the pumpkin away, like the flesh of the fruit, and what remains usually as leftovers, but also consumed pretty soon thereafter is the skin. But they go after what they can quickly, and then they work down the slower composting stuff eventually too. I'm getting that sense like perhaps here I don't even have as much moisture as we had in bucket number 1. With bucket number 1, everything seemed really damp and quite capable of remaining like stacked up the way we're trying to do again here. Except here it feels like perhaps there isn't quite as much moisture as we saw in bucket number 1. And it wasn't quite what I was expecting. Maybe if we were to just do one quick probe down low, just to get a reality check, even if we're unable to stack it all high. So yeah, maybe this is what I was reacting to last time. Stuff that seems like it might be a little bit overly damp. Yeah, I think we're going to do the system good by dropping in some nice dry paper. Help suck up some of this moisture. You know, let's see if we can get in here really quick with the bedding. Oh geez, there we go. That's just one of the hazards of stacking stuff up right to the rim. Dropping stuff on the bench or on the floor. In this case, I got a little bit of each. This was on the bench. And this was on the floor. Luckily, no worms in either. That was cool. I guess I was really mostly concerned about stranding some poor little wormies. So once again, we'll see about combining this newly added bedding material with some of the surrounding stuff. Make it a little bit more likely that worm traffic will be able to take advantage of that stuff rather than it just sitting there as a big mound. And here, somehow I don't feel like I was able to excavate quite as large of a hole. So let's make sure we're done with the feeding and the application of the fresh foods before we go much further. We'll make sure we leave enough stuff to cover up with in the end. And before we add a little bit more bedding, let's give them grit. And then we're almost there. I like the idea of giving these systems easier to eat type bedding now rather than piling in more leaves. Ever since we started that set it and forget it test, we use leaves as the way to stack this system up to the rim full. All dampened leaves, and then we initiated the forget it phase. And it does seem to me like a lot of those leaves that were stacked in here, perhaps even back then at this point, however long ago that was, perhaps we're still seeing remnants of that. Because I've been adding only paper-based bedding, I believe, in the past few check-ins, and that's a good way to proceed, I believe, if you want to end up with a relatively easy harvest of fairly clean castings. All right, everyone, that's it for our check-in with the yellow buckets. Things seem to be going pretty good here. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.